They built 143 homes on my land, and the worst part is they didn't do it by mistake. They did it knowing exactly who I was. I inherited 62 acres of paid-off lakeside property in Tennessee after my father died, and for nearly 3 years I stayed away because grief has a way of making even beautiful places feel haunted. But the taxes were always paid, every receipt saved, every boundary map filed. So when I finally drove back to scatter my father's ashes, I expected silence, pine trees, and the old fishing dock he built with his own hands. Instead, I found paved roads, stone entry walls, manicured lawns, and 143 luxury homes standing where our cedar trees used to be. Families were unloading furniture. Children were riding bikes. A giant sign at the entrance read, Hawthorne Lake Estates, Private Community. Then the HOA president walked out, looked me up and down like I was trash blown in from the highway, and told me I was trespassing on private property. I said, "This is my land." She laughed in my face. Her smile only got bigger when I showed her the deed photo on my phone. She said her lawyers had already cleared everything, that the land had been abandoned, that people like me always appear when money starts moving. Then she leaned close and whispered, "We've already sold every house. You're too late." That was the moment I should have screamed. I should have called the sheriff. I should have chained myself to the gate. But I didn't. I looked past her at those perfect new homes, at the workers still pouring concrete in the unfinished cul-de-sacs, and I realized something. If I moved too early, they'd bury the truth in delays, bankruptcies, and paperwork. So I did the one thing nobody expected. I smiled, got back in my truck, and let them finish building every last house. My name is Ethan Cross. I'm a structural engineer, divorced, tired more often than I admit, and not the kind of man anyone mistakes for dangerous. But my father was obsessive about records. He kept land surveys in sealed tubes, tax receipts in dated envelopes, and one handwritten note tucked inside the original deed. Never let polished liars steal what honest hands built. The next morning, I hired the kind of attorney rich developers fear more than regulators. Her name was Mara Quinn, and she listened without interrupting while I laid every document across her conference table. When I finished, she looked at the receipts, looked at me, and said the HOA's entire claim was dead on arrival. The taxes had been paid. The title had never transferred. No court had ever awarded possession, which meant the developers had sold 143 homes on land they did not own. I asked her how fast we could stop construction. She said, "Fast is how you lose." Then she gave me a strategy so cold it made my skin prickle. She told me to let them finish everything. Let them pave the roads. Let them install the gates. Let them close every sale. Because the moment we filed after completion, we wouldn't just be fighting over dirt. We'd be standing over 143 finished assets built on stolen land, backed by fraudulent permits, false filings, and millions in exposure. So I stayed quiet. Twice a week, I parked on the county road and filmed progress. Brick by brick, pool by pool, they kept building my future evidence. Vanessa spotted me one afternoon and sent a deputy to warn me away. A week later, I got a certified letter accusing me of harassment. Another week later, she posted my truck online and called me a stalker. But every threat, every photo, every lie only proved one thing. They knew there was a dispute, and they kept building anyway. That's when I understood this wasn't greed anymore. It was confidence. They were certain I'd break before they did. By December, families had moved into most of the neighborhood, and that was the part that made this hard. The buyers weren't villains. They were teachers, nurses, retirees, young couples with strollers and savings drained into down payments. They thought they were buying peace. They had no idea they were living inside a fraud. Vanessa, meanwhile, got uglier. She filed false complaints with county code enforcement. Someone tagged my garage door with the word thief. A private investigator showed up at my son's workplace asking if violence ran in the family. Then a fake tax complaint triggered an audit notice that nearly made me laugh from pure disbelief. Every time they hit me, Mara's answer was the same: document everything. Then, just when the pressure felt unbearable, the first crack appeared. A former title employee sent Mara an internal file. Buried inside, it was an email from Vanessa's husband, Adrian Hale, the real money behind the project. In that email, he admitted they knew the land still belonged to me, knew the adverse possession story wouldn't survive court, and planned to move so fast that I'd either settle cheap or drown in legal costs before anyone stopped them. There was in black and white, intent, fraud, and the reason they never looked nervous when they lied to my face. Mara read the email once, smiled for the first time since I hired her, and said, "Now we don't have a land dispute. Now we have a weapon." 2 days later, local reporters started calling. Buyers inside Hawthorne Lake Estates were panicking. My phone filled with messages from homeowners asking if they were going to lose everything. I told every single one the same truth. I wasn't coming for them. I was coming for the people who built a fortune on stolen ground and thought normal people were too tired, too poor, or too scared to fight back. The courtroom was packed on the morning of the hearing. Homeowners sat shoulder to shoulder behind me, terrified, confused, furious. Vanessa arrived in cream silk with a face so controlled it looked carved. Adrian walked in beside her, pretending he still believed money could buy gravity. Mara let their attorney talk first. He called it a misunderstanding. He called it a title issue. He called it a complex property matter. Then Mara stood up and turned their entire defense into ash. She submitted the tax history, the recorded surveys, the permit timeline, the harassment letters, the false complaints, and then she handed the judge Adrian's email. I watched the color drain from Vanessa's face before the judge even finished the second paragraph. The room went dead silent. Their lawyer tried to stall, but it was too late. The judge froze all sales, blocked any further transfers, and moved the case onto an emergency trial schedule. By the time the full trial began, reporters were waiting outside. The title company had started cooperating, and one subcontractor admitted under oath that permits had been rushed through after cash payments changed hands. Mara was relentless. She took Adrian apart piece by piece until even his own answers sounded like confessions. Vanessa refused to testify. The judge noticed. Everyone noticed. Late the next afternoon, the ruling came down. Full title to the entire 62 acres remained with me. Every structure built on the property legally attached to that title. All 143 homes. The damages, the legal fees, the fraud referral. The courtroom erupted before the bailiff shut it down. Vanessa looked at me like I had ruined her life. The truth was simpler than that. She had gambled everything on the idea that I wouldn't survive the pressure. She lost because she mistook patience for weakness. Legally, I could have taken everything. I could have evicted every family, sold every house again, and turned their fraud into my fortune. A lot of people expected me to. But my father didn't raise me to become the next predator just because the law finally handed me power. So a month after the ruling, I called a meeting inside the unfinished clubhouse at Hawthorne Lake Estates. All 143 families showed up, some angry, some crying, some expecting the worst. I stood in front of them with Mara beside me and told them the one thing nobody else in this story had ever given them, the truth. I said they were victims, not trespassers. I said I wouldn't profit from their fear. Then I announced that I was transferring the homes into a community land trust, allowing each family to keep their house at the exact price they had already paid, with the recovered damages and seized developer assets covering the legal transfer, roads, and shared property. For a second, nobody moved. Then one woman started crying. Then a man in the back took off his cap and clapped. Then the whole room came apart. Months later, Adrian was facing criminal charges. Vanessa was banned from serving on any development board in the state, and Hawthorne Lake Estates had a new sign at the entrance. Not the one they built. Mine. It reads, "Cross Landing, built on stolen land, returned by truth." I kept 6 acres by the lake, rebuilt my father's dock, and finally scattered his ashes where I was meant to in the first place. Some mornings I sit there before sunrise with a coffee in my hand, listening to the neighborhood wake up behind me, and I think about how close evil came to winning just because it was expensive, polished, and loud. They built 143 homes on my land. In the end, I let them, because sometimes the strongest way to stop thieves isn't to shout when they start. It's to wait until they finish digging the hole they're about to fall into.